This is the I've ever rated a Marvel movie ever.
I disagree.
Welcome back to the Alter Ego Bros. I'm Andy, that's Nick, and today we're going to be talking about Spider-Man something.
Brand new day.
Brand new day, sure. I've lost track. But before we jump into it, make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps our channel out. If you want to support small local channels, we're not local, but we are small. We'd really appreciate it. I scored this movie an 8 out of 10. This is the highest I've ever rated a Marvel movie ever, outside of maybe Avengers movies, but we didn't start a review channel back then, so I really like those ones. But I think the highest previous to this was like a 6, so this is a leap up. I really enjoyed this one.
This is basically a Marvel 10 out of 10, guys.
It basically is, because I had to be nitpicky with my deductions.
All right, hold up. I thought it was all right. I gave it a 10 out of 10. Hell yeah. I really like this movie. Hell yeah. Yeah, so I really enjoyed this movie. I actually had to go back and rewatch Spider-Man 2 just to make sure that it's still the GOAT. And it is. It's still the GOAT. It's still number 1. But damn, does Brand New Day come really close.
We'll dive into that in a second. But first, we got to combine our scores and give this a 9 out of 10. I'm glad you mentioned Tobey Maguire, because I didn't know if I was weird for thinking this, but after I had seen it, and even as I was watching it, it felt like kind of more that old school Spider-Man that I'm used to. Like, this is something I can throw on and casually watch, but also just be entertained by it at the same time over and over again. Typically, with a Marvel storyline, it gets a little bit too basic. Sometimes they write themselves in a hole and they have to come up with the most bullshit thing that they didn't set up at all to resolve the conflict. This one, I felt like they did a really good job of setting up the storyline so that the conclusion made a lot of sense, because they introduced some of that stuff as you went through it. It's my opinion, maybe, but it is kind of like a alternate universe of Stranger Things, right? Because now we have Sadie Sink, basically Vecna.
Reeling it back in. I agree. I think where this movie really excelled was bringing it down, and they even say in the movie, to small potatoes, right? They're constantly talking about it. This is street level. This is solely focused around Spider-Man and his current circumstance. And the larger Marvel story is very secondary, even like tertiary. That's a big word. That means third. It's not the focus, and it's not trying to like propel that story forward, because that story's already been done elsewhere. And that's where Marvel shines, is when they focus down on the character that the movie's about and stop trying to reel in these big major plot points that nobody's going to remember come the next Avengers movie. Although this one is in December, but I don't think it's going to have very much to do with Spider-Man. However, there are a lot of little breadcrumbs in there where you can see that there are some major implications that this movie makes towards the future of the franchise. It does leave those in there, but they're very subtle, and that was a good change.
Yeah, I also came away with being reminded of The Dark Knight, because Christopher Nolan really changed the landscape of superhero movies. Because it used to be these comical, kind of just like jokey, like they didn't last very long, all of those versions of like Batman back in the day. And then we get this more serious, this more real, this more zoomed in scope, and with real life consequences, like stuff that you feel like you can relate to. And that's where this movie really just kind of like laid its ground as well. It's like you really felt like you could relate to some of these characters for like the first time in a while in a Marvel movie. It brought it back down to earth for the first time in a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, Kylie and I talked about this too. She didn't go see it, but a big draw for her in those initial wave of like single Avengers movie leading up to 2012 Avengers is that those movies do take themselves rather seriously. But then once we moved past that, we had Guardians of the Galaxy, it really didn't take itself seriously. It was a new IP. It made tons of money. And Marvel was like, oh, this is what the people want. So they started leaning more into that. Then we had Thor Ragnarok, which was funny. That was good. It had an interesting vibe, but that's because it was so different to what came before it. Now we're kind of at the end of that, where they've kept making these silly, jokey movies. Everybody's got to be funny. Nothing's really serious. Like, there's these situations where whole cities have like gone missing and people have died, and they're just like laughing shit off, and people were snapped away, and they're like, oh, whatever. But this one really does bring that focus back in.
The story also can't be told without great acting. And this is one of the first time, actually, I've rated a Marvel movie with just fantastic acting. I didn't have a problem with anyone's performance in this at all. And I joked about Sadie Sink earlier, but although like I still see a little bit of Stranger Things when I look at her, I thought she did a good job of portraying this new character in this whole new universe, and I didn't get too distracted by that. And I thought her acting performance was actually really, really good too. I was also just especially impressed with Tom Holland, because a lot of times I think he's a great actor, but sometimes I want to see a little bit more depth from him. And I felt like that lacked in the Odyssey for me. But I thought I got to experience that a little bit more here. And this was, I cried at one point in this movie. I was just like, oh my God, I feel the emotions and everything. It finally got to that point. Part of that's good writing, part of that's good directing, all the things, but you still need that piece of good acting. So I was really, really impressed with all of the acting.
So this director is not the same director who did the other 3 Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. This was directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, who also did the Shang-Chi Marvel movie, which is also a really, really good Marvel film that kind of does the same thing. And man, he took it to the next level. Not only was the suit on point, not only did they have those like comic book moments where they kind of slow everything down and you could see the comic book come to life on the screen, but you got to see behind Peter's eyes some of the web slinging and how that functioned. And it was really a callback to everything that had come before it, Spider-Man wise, and how all of that led to who Peter is today. And just the strength of that knowledge and putting that to the screen was incredible. For the short amount of time that they had, I felt like this was a very complete movie from beginning to end.
Cinematography, I thought this was actually the best I've seen in a Spider-Man movie. The way he flew through the city, you could feel it at times too. Like some of those shots and visuals were just really impressive, and some of them disorienting as well. And it just makes you feel the danger of just like, man, just imagine like he's just like a second or two too late from releasing his web, or the building was a little bit further away than he thought or something. He's dead. And right. I've always known that. I think we've always known that. But like this one, I felt it. And some of the cool just visual tricks that they do with disorienting you with the upside down moments and stuff like that, I thought were really good. It really was evident that this movie and story and everything about it was entirely thought through well in advance before they shot it. So then to talk about special effects and music, this is usually where it always falls a little bit short for me in these Marvel movies. Music-wise, there's never just like a genuine theme that just impresses me. And even like during the main poor sad moment in this film, the music to me just felt like something you'd search on YouTube for music to fall asleep to. It was soft, it was, relaxing, whatever, but it wasn't like something like, it felt like AI could have wrote this. That would be the next level for this film for me, is to bring in some sort of musical producer, writer that can actually come in and give this universe a theme. And like the Avengers has a theme, and it just, you feel that, and it's triumphant. And like Spider-Man should have a theme too, and he just doesn't. And so that was lackluster. And when it comes to special effects, all in all, they're good. But I think, especially when we see what Christopher Nolan is still able to do in 2026 with a camera that lasts 3 minutes at a time, and you have to ship the film immediately, and it can be affected by the freaking humidity and temperature in the air. He can still use special effects in no problem, and it just makes everything look more real, tangible, and you feel those impacts a bit more. And to me, that's where Marvel still falls short, is they rely on CGI a bit too much and this bit too futuristic looking type stuff. Some of those big gripes to me too is like there were bombs that went off and exploded some cop cars, and the explosions I think were real explosions. I think they got some gas barrels and exploded them. That looked good. But the moment it went off is the moment that car turned to CG, and it took me out of it, because now you have a CG right next to a practical thing, and it really gives away the CG. And it's those moments where it's just like, how much more expensive, if any, if it's probably less, to get a shell of a car and get it on a pulley and pull it, and just do that and just make that whole thing feel more real. I genuinely believe that's less expensive than having a whole team of going in and doing the CGI for that car. Point being, those are the places I really want Marvel to push it to that next level and get us back to where we were in like our mid 2000s with The Dark Knight. Like, give me a real semi that flips over. Give me something real and let me really feel it.
Now do this with a nice echo effect and it'll be epic.
I disagree.
Go ahead.
Obviously, I do think that Marvel should push more towards the practical effects. That is a given. However, I think compared to other Marvel works, this one did have quite a lot of practical effects in it. There were real sets. There are behind the scenes footage that you can see where they do have those shell cars. It may not have been in that scene in particular, but all in all, I think it did head towards the right direction. Going back to your other point about the music, Michael Giacchino, I believe I don't know how you say it, but he did the music for all the Spider-Man Tom Holland movies. Spider-Man is one of the actual heroes in the MCU right now who does have his own theme, and it does kind of harken back to the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Spider-Man's just got the bum bum bum, and then it kind of goes and does its own thing. So he does have his own theme. I do think it's recognizable, so I do push back on that a little bit. However, I don't disagree that I think they needed somebody else. Like they got a new director. I do think it would have been refreshing to get a new composer for this as well. And I don't know how much was actually riding on the curtails of the movies that came before. Probably a lot. It was still good enough in my book.
But don't just take our word for it. Let's see what the internet has to say. Okay, so looking online, it looks like everyone's pretty much in agreement with where we are. The audience has scored this about a 9 out of 10, and critics have scored it about an 8 out of 10.
Oh, yeah.
So with that said, I guess we have to look at a negative review. So here's a 1 out of 10 that we found online. First, boring Spider-Man film. Oh boy. This was literally the last release before Doomsday, and considering no other projects coming up between Doomsday and Secret Wars, this meant to be something special. Had tons of expectations, but let down completely. Literally no plot progression, just some random cool action sequences that we already have seen before, and some melodrama that's already shown hell lot of times in previous films. Absolute disgrace. Thanks, Odyssey, for saving the day. Okay. I can't disagree with this anymore. I think everything they have said was completely wrong. Yeah. I literally would go back and watch this over and over again quicker than the Odyssey. I'll say that. And I scored the Odyssey a 10. So that's where I am with that.
I was actually pretty shocked that I kind of felt the same way. Like, I would put this a little bit above the Odyssey just as a fun watch, whereas you kind of have to prep for the Odyssey, be like, oh, 3 hours, okay. Spider-Man you could just throw on and have a good time with. I don't think it was boring unless you were just blatantly missing out on what the story had to tell you. There's a lot of things in there. This was the most normal of a get-together, a superhero team-up that I think we could have had in the Marvel universe currently.
Well, there you have it. This guy is a fucking idiot. And with that, thank you for liking and subscribing. We really appreciate it. You did do it, right? I hope you did. We literally can't track it, so handshake. And remember, we're just two regular dudes
doing regular reviews. As you can tell, it's constricting in the face region. It was me the whole time.